Launching a new brand is surrounded by a very specific adrenaline-fueled mythology. It usually involves James Bond-level secrecy, an explosive burst of hype, and the expectation of sending a massive shockwave through the market. But this survival curve chart shows a much harsher reality. More than half of all new brand launches and product variants experience a steep drop-off, completely fizzling out and disappearing from shelves within 2 years. New brands do not grow through a magical, unique anomaly in consumer behavior. They follow the exact same mathematical laws of growth as established legacy brands. The only difference is that they are starting from a market penetration of 0. Because the traditional launch playbook relies on a romanticized delusion of human behavior, it sets brands up for failure. To survive those first 2 years, we have to ignore the hype and look at the math. The first major myth assumes that the earliest people to buy a new brand will become deeply converted, loyal evangelists. This diagram illustrates who those early adopters actually are: heavy category buyers. They are the first to buy a new brand simply because they are constantly buying things in this specific category anyway. Their defining trait is variety. They will buy the new brand today and confidently buy a competitor's brand next week. The new launch is simply dropped into their crowded repertoire, where it gets buried under a pile of competing purchases. If a brand's earliest adopters are statistically the least loyal buyers in the market, building a long-term business model around a small cult of them is mathematically impossible. The second myth dictates that a massive, concentrated opening week campaign is the primary engine for establishing a brand. The actual data outlines a 2-stage blueprint. Stage 1 uses that initial burst of launch activity purely to attract enough early sales to secure physical distribution and physically get onto the shelf. This timeline compares the two approaches. In Stage 2, the brand must be continually on air. To actually grow, a brand needs to capture light buyers. Because light buyers purchase infrequently, their buying cycles completely miss a short-term marketing burst. Apple's original iPod succeeded by following this exact logic. Rather than relying entirely on opening week hype, Apple supported the iPod with a consistent, steadily increasing quarterly media spend. The vast majority of growth comes from people who rarely buy the category. To reach them, a brand's visibility must outlast its own launch party. The third myth insists a new brand must convince buyers of a complex, unique differentiator or an obscure emotional niche to compel them to switch. The actual mental requirements to trigger a first-time purchase are incredibly basic. Buyers simply need to know what the product is, what it looks like, and where they can buy it. This network map visualizes category entry points. Marketers most prioritize linking their new brand to the most common everyday buying cues, like needing a fast refreshment, rather than hunting for a unique but totally isolated niche. Buyers do not require a philosophical conversion to try something new. They just need the brand to be the easiest, most obvious answer to a common daily need. When corporations launch a variant of an existing brand, they often panic, fearing the new product will simply cannibalize the parent brand sales. Reassuring, cannibalization is not a disaster. It is a completely normal and mathematically predictable feature of overlapping customer bases. This Venn diagram models the duplication of purchase law. It calculates the exact acceptable amount of overlap a new variant should have with its parent, giving companies an objective benchmark to measure true growth. Artificially stunting a new variant's marketing to protect a parent brand defies the mathematical laws of how markets actually overlap. The limits should be dictated by data, not fear. The thrilling, romanticized illusions of the launch room rarely survive contact with the data. Abandon the search for mythical influencers, discard the short-term hype, and stop obsessing over tiny niches. Launching a successful brand is the hard, continuous, unglamorous work of building massive physical distribution and broad mental availability across the entire market. Success isn't a magical anomaly. It is the relentless math of being easy to think of, being easy to buy, and staying visible.